Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video episode on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian. I'm here today at the Rock Island Auction House taking a look at some of the guns that they've got coming up for sale in their June of 2015 regional auction. Now, a couple auctions ago, I took a look at a pair of Standard Arms Model G semi-automatic rifles. And I noticed in this auction they had a Model M, and I wanted to pull this one out and show it to you because there's a cool comparison between the two. So, people are probably going to be familiar with the Remington Model 8 and the Winchester series of self-loaders, the 1905, 1907, and 1910. Those are commonly understood to be the two different semi-auto rifles that were commercially available to sportsmen right around the turn of the 20th century. So 1905, 1908, these guns were all coming on the market. Well, there was actually a third option, and that was the Standard Arms. They made a long-stroke gas piston semi-automatic sporting rifle. It came out in 1909. It was patented by a fellow named Morris Smith. It was manufactured by the Standard Arms Company. And it was a third option. It was chambered in a series of relatively high power cartridges. They were the same cartridges that were used by the Remington 8. So the 25, 30, 32, and 35 Remington cartridges, although the vast majority appear to be in 30 Remington. So the Standard Arms semi-automatic rifle was kind of interesting in that it also had a pump handle and a gas cutoff, and you could turn off the gas system and use it as a manually operated rifle if you wanted to. Which kind of sounds better than it really was. It still had the recoil springs in it, so when you were using it as a pump rifle, you had to fight the recoil spring every time you cycled the gun. And worse for the Model G, it was also dramatically unreliable and prone to parts breakage when used as a semi-auto. So it kind of gave the rifle a really bad name. It did not work well. What's interesting is that simultaneously, while they were selling the Model G, they also had a Model M in the catalog, which was a rifle that was only pump operated. And that's what we have here. You can see there's no gas system out here. This isn't a magazine tube or anything. It's just a cylindrical surface for the pump handle to run on. Like so. And if you didn't want a semi-auto rifle, you could buy a Model M. Be a little cheaper, about 20% cheaper. And frankly, in retrospect, far better to buy because these didn't have the parts breakages, or all of them, the same number of parts breakages that the semi-auto rifles did. So why don't we go ahead and open this guy up and take a look at the insides and see how they operate. Disassembly of a Standard Arms rifle, either a Model M or a Model G, begins by running a punch down into this hole. Cartridge case, or a live cartridge, is actually the typical alternative. And what that does is allow you to break the rifle into an upper and a lower. What we're actually doing when you put a punch in there is moving this spring-loaded latch that holds the two pieces together. Now, let's start at the bottom for a moment. You can see this is a striker-fired gun, so we don't have a hammer. When you pull the trigger, it simply lowers the sear, releases the striker. And then we have our magazine opening. So this is actually loaded from the bottom. Doesn't use stripper clips. There's no effective really way to load from the top. What you do is pop this open, drop your rounds in, and then snap it shut again. So that's pretty much all there is to the lower. Looking at the upper, we have a pump handle out here. Exact same pump handle as was used on the semi-automatic Model G, but there is no gas system. So this tube is here just to act as a surface for the pump handle to ride on. And then when we get into the internals, we have our bolt, which slides back and forth. You can see the striker spring right in here. And if I push it all the way back against the back of the receiver, you can see it cocking the striker. Now this has, let's see, it's difficult to see, but there is a recess in the top of the receiver right up here. And then we actually have a two-part bolt. The back half of the bolt drops into that recess to lock. So when it's all the way forward, in just a moment here, you'll see the back of the bolt drop right there. It is now locked in place. In order to cycle it, we push this button on the pump handle, and then we are actually going to compress the striker first. Once the striker is fully compressed, that releases the two parts of the bolt so that they can unlock and cycle backwards. This is kind of a kludgy design. It works that way because of the semi-automatic version that came first. It is top ejecting, so you load from the bottom, ejects out the top. Sights are pretty typical. It's interesting to note this one is marked manufactured by Standard Arms Company, Wilmington, Delaware. Standard Arms Company was the name of the first company, which was only in operation in 1910 and 1909. They went out of business, and the patents and the tooling and the guns were then purchased. Basically, a new company was formed to try and do better. The new one was the Standard Arms Manufacturing Company. So the fact that this Model M, pump-only rifle, it was made by the very first company kind of proves that these guns were manufactured side by side with the semi-automatic versions and not a kind of a last-ditch idea of something to do with parts once the semi-autos really got a bad reputation. So, reassembly is very simple. I'm going to close the bolt, get that locked in place, and then I have a hole in the front of the lower, and we have a pin right here on the upper. Just lock those two together. And there we go. One should point out that while the pump-only rifle was definitely a better idea for a buyer than the semi-automatic rifle, the problem was the pump rifle also had to compete with the Remington Model 14 pump-action rifle, and frankly, the Remington was a much better gun. So this didn't have the durability problems of the Model G self-loader, but it was kind of a no-brainer that you'd buy a Remington instead of a pump-action only Standard Arms. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. The Standard Arms are kind of interesting because they were such a failure commercially that most people don't even realize that they ever existed today. And yet, there were actually 3 major options for self-loading rifles in the United States on the commercial market several years before World War I. Another thing a lot of people don't quite realize. So if you'd like to add this to your own collection, maybe you already have some Remington and Winchester self-loaders and you'd like to add this one to the batch, you can certainly do so. It's for sale at Rock Island coming up at the end of June. If you take a look at the link in the description text below, that will take you to Rock Island's catalog page on it. See their pictures, see their description, and place a bid online if you'd like it. Thanks for watching.